Happy post 4th of July. A lot of things are happening right now in the crypto markets. Bitcoin selling off over the 4th, and of course, a ton more happening. Is this a little bit of an overreaction? There might be a silver lining in this one. You do not want to miss it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. As you guys can see today, I am out of the studio, a little under the weather, but that does not matter. I am here for you. I want to make sure we cover a lot of what is happening in the news. There's a ton going on, and I want to break down a lot of different sectors and also potentials here, not only in crypto, but also in the traditional markets as well as a little bit of politics. So this is going to be a good one. Let's kind of jump over to this first tweet. Bitcoin, of course, extending its decline and enters bear market territory. Everybody calling this a bear market, now 25% down, recent all-time high. Would look at this and maybe consider this could be the case. However, you think about what is happening right now in terms of the impact on the market, it is not necessarily the thing that everyone is expecting, because this is not retail selling off. This is, in fact, some of the biggest sellers out there in the market. The other things that are playing into this, and as I said, when you look at Mt. Gox right now, and you can see something here, 99% of Mt. Gox's 8.2 billion Bitcoin could be sold. This is kind of the number that everybody's been concerned about. Let's assume that's a number that everyone was selling versus what could be coming in. A couple of points in the article right here. Bitcoin's been on the downtrend for the entire month of June, logging nearly an 18% loss. That, of course, now down. Understand this is very controversial. Based on the current and low demand, this will easily send Bitcoin back into a harsh bear market. This is coming from an analyst looking at what we could see as maybe that 40K number. All right, so I want to jump over to this tab right here just to give you guys an idea. There's the 8 billion there, as you can see. On Mt. Gox, that's the thing that everybody is concerned about in terms of the exit. If you go further into the transactions, let me zoom in on these really closely so you guys can see them. There's the 84 million happening. This, of course, was 13 hours ago. Continuation of that, another 1,000, etc. What we're seeing, there's 154 million, 17. Okay, so you can see that it seems to be paced. And of course, many people would say, all right, well, if it's being paced, that at least is a good sign for the markets. Maybe this isn't necessarily a complete and utter push to the bottom, even though I think a lot of these bigger holders might be in a position where they could have done maybe an over-the-counter trade to not even affect the markets themselves. That's the thing that's kind of weird. This, of course, is a tweet right here, just kind of showing the biggest liquidation since the FTX collapse. So not necessarily normal in terms of market cycles, but it definitely is, I think, still a very resilient position overall. I'll stay on the tabs here. I want to go over to this topic right here, because this is Bitcoin's decline causes major share drop with crypto stocks. And of course, we know who number one is right there, and that is MicroStrategy shares plummeted 6% in pre-market trading. Bitcoin mining firms like Riot, Marathon all suffered losses 5%, 6%, and 8% respectively. And then Coinbase also came down 5%. But that's not necessarily the story on all the S&P, and that's why I think this may be a silver lining in disguise. So let's just continue on. We'll take a look further. All right, another tweet I want to hit to is Bitcoin miners break records in 2023 and 4. As the top sellers, as 2024 approached, the pace of transfers to exchanges intensified and impacted the excess supply and low demand in the spot market. This, of course, is normal for what we've seen in the past in the market. Now, remember, you're still putting in governments and, of course, the Mt. Gox recovered Bitcoin into the play now, so it does change things up quite a bit. Germany is in a very interesting situation. Imagine dumping the hardest asset in the world for a currency that is falling in value by design. Yes, that's Germany. And, of course, they're selling their Bitcoin right now for euros. You can see it in a big way. There's a little bit of pushback on this when you look at nation states. Not necessarily are we going to be dealing with nation states that really understand Bitcoin outside of what we've seen with El Salvador and some of the emerging markets. But at the same time, I think there are people rising in these governments that are starting to understand. And this is the argument I have a lot with many people looking at just digital assets as a whole is they argue that the markets aren't ready for it, legislation's not ready for it, all those kind of things. This is, of course, the German parliament member. Her name is Jonah Kotar. Says the government selling Bitcoin is ridiculous, not sensible, but urges everybody, hey, let's kind of hold Bitcoin as a strategy for our reserve currency. And there are some interesting opinions on that, even if you think about what Trump is saying. All right, I want to jump over here to this. Of course, Mr. Peter Schiff comes as Ethereum is also breaking key support. It's trading below 2,900, down 30% from its March high. I think a crash to 1,500 is coming, and it looks like these buying ETH rumors couldn't wait for the fact to sell. So this is the best FUD I see is coming out of course, Mr. Peter Schiff. And let's go into a little bit more positive news, and that, of course, is the Ethereum conference coming up July 8th. This is going to be a big deal. I think we're going to see some pretty interesting and interesting too on July 8th. I mean, this is very good timing because we could see the ETH launch also. Remember, next week most likely will be at least a date assignment. That's coming in from Bloomberg. I get it. They've been wrong before, but the likelihood of seeing a July launch, I'm still very strong on that. So, and when I say July launch for the ETF, so this starts to point to things that are a little bit more positive. All right, so some other things that are going on right now is we've got to consider the international situation. And when you look at the international situation, the UK is one of the most, I think, important categories. In fact, did you know that the United Kingdom is the number 2 country in terms of viewership for this show? So you can kind of catch what's going on in the UK. If you look at just this most recent result, general election results in 2024, tectonic plates are shifting. Let me kind of zoom in on this for you guys a little bit, and I'll show you a few things within this. British politics have shifted after the Britons resoundingly voted to put out an end to 14 years of conservative rule and deliver a landslide victory for the Labour Party. Now, what does that mean? A little different than what we've seen in the past. There's Sunak versus what we've seen right here with the new potentials with Keir Starmer. Further down in here, look at this. This is 2024. The red is the Labour Party. This was 19 and that was 17. So this is a potential long run for the Labour Party in the UK. And if they get a long run, imagine the kind of impact that they could make. Some of the impact that they've already started to move on are things like this, where you're seeing the UK, obviously the election could see a focus on real world asset tokenizations and CBDC development. Now, I don't necessarily like CBDCs, but the idea is that we would see more blockchain integrated technology from a G7 country. And I think that's an important move in the right direction. Another big move is this right here, and that is the finance minister. What I'm showing here is a PDF of course, Rachel Reeves, who has just been put into this position, in fact, just as of today. Now, what this means, there's a couple of points I want to hit to down here on page 19 of this long report, and that is this section right here, make the UK a global hub for securities. And let's zoom in on that right there, guys. Embracing tokenization could increase liquidity, provide access to new asset classes and fractionalized assets, and strengthen risk in management. Simply put, we could have a complete new strategy around what the UK is doing here. I want to go to a clip real quick, and this next clip is the UK Prime Minister talking a little bit more about the situation. Take a look.
Apologizing to his party for the scale of the loss. Keir Starmer, leader of the centre-left Labour, will now become the country's next prime minister.
With the opportunity, after 14 years, to get its future back.
So tell us what this all means.
What this means is that Keir Starmer is perhaps the most powerful prime minister since Tony Blair in 1997. He's got a massive majority. He can do what he wants. So basically what he wants to pass will happen. I interviewed Jamie Dimon in London a few weeks ago, and he just met with both leaders. And the headline from that, he said, both of them are pro-business. There's also the possibility to take the UK a bit closer to the EU again. The renegotiation is next year. Right. It comes early in his parliament, so he doesn't have to worry about facing an election immediately after it and what that might do. I think the interesting business similarity is inflation. Inflation is kryptonite for whoever's in power. And the difference you have here in the US is at least the rest of the economy has been going well. And it offsets the damage that inflation does, at least partially.
I was struck that you said both the Conservatives and Labor are both pro-business.
Rachel Reeves expected to be announced as the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. We've had female prime ministers, of course, but the first female finance minister today. He gets to pick his cabinet, so we don't know for sure what it is, but almost certain she'll be finance minister. She's very clearly pro-business.
So there you see it. I mean, this is a big shift in global politics, and that's the thing that is going to make, I think, a very intriguing landscape among G7 countries, because they're going to be watching what's happening here. You also have major elections shifting in France. This could be one of the most volatile times in terms of political leadership that we've seen in our lifetime. As they mentioned there on the Labor Party, first time in 40 years. I want to go to this next clip because this gets into, of course, our own President Biden and his position as to whether or not he's even going to be the candidate. This is a clip on what happens today. Is it his last stance? Take a look.
The donor class is abandoning him. The members of Congress are afraid. The governors are afraid. I talked to them, and they're trying to figure out what the hell we can do.
What is he going to have to say tonight? And if he puts on a good performance, does that change the dynamic?
He can't say I had a bad night.
He can't say it. He's going to have to say he had a bad night. If he doesn't say he had a bad night, then what's he going to say?
I didn't do what I wanted to do. I didn't say what I wanted to say. That's what happened.
And you think that answer...
You said not to use the "I had a bad night."
No, you don't use the words "I had a bad night," but you have to be able to explain it away.
But you don't think that he and Jill Biden are going to ultimately have to anoint somebody?
I don't believe he's going to go. If he waffles, then they will push him out. I'm going to be direct.
Yep.
God help me. You may never have me on the show again.
You don't even have to say it. We understand.
Nobody wants to knock out an African-American woman and be held responsible for that.
Right.
And here's the issue. Her favorability is still, she's the most unpopular vice president since Dan Quayle. All of them would do a better job than she would because they get the public.
So this is a pickle for the Democrats. They have a president that is in position of power, but unfortunately may not even be making the calls here. And I think this is the thing that will challenge the Dems. Do they let this run out and just know that there's a cabinet behind President Biden, so that, because if they say he's not willing to continue the race, maybe they are concerned that he's not willing to serve as president. That would be a huge hit to the market if he stepped aside and Vice President Harris came onto the scene. That's the one thing I don't think anybody in the markets would like. So this tweet is from Eleanor Terrett over at Fox Business. And she's talking about a couple of things. Ro Khanna's crypto roundtable. Obviously, this would be inroads to the White House and the Dems. And remember, we've got Mark Cuban in on this. It is, I would agree, it's the worst kept secret out there. We've talked about it many times, but there's a couple of points that I think are important with this. You have to remember that this was done prior to the debate debacle. And maybe at that time, it was being looked at as a way to win the crypto vote. Maybe now it is a way for someone like a Ro Khanna or a Mark Cuban to simply say, okay, listen, you gotta call the dogs off. Chevron deference is flipped. We've got to get the CFTC and the SEC about these overreach and digital assets. I think Cuban will definitely make that point. And could this make Biden look coherent enough to make these kinds of decisions and make these kinds of conversations into a position where he could campaign and possibly stay in the race, or even have a position of potentially winning against Donald Trump if his position flips a little bit on crypto? I know it's a reach, but I want you guys to think about this. This is a very pivotal meeting for both Joe Biden and the Democrats, maybe bigger than any of the other ones, maybe bigger than this interview tonight, because I think the interview is all show. That's going to be just something that, yes, if he shows up, which is going to be well scripted, well edited, sure, maybe people would change their mind a little bit. But I think a real action is different, and this meeting could be that for sure. All right, so I want to jump over to the Tesla short sellers. They lost $3.5 billion in 2 days of trading after the deliveries report, which Elon, of course, smashed it on deliveries. And this is very bullish for the markets. It's good for Tesla. It's good for NVIDIA. It's good for the S&P 500 as a whole. Why are we not seeing these kind of moves, of course, here in the risk markets? And I think this is still one of those things that is preceding potential runs. When you see gains like this happening, both NVIDIA, Tesla, Meta, you could go down the list, pretty significant. I'll stay on a couple of tweets here. This one right here just showing NVIDIA just broke a $3 trillion market cap, 150% since Nancy Pelosi bought up $5 million of a call option back in November. Man, what a trade. Another tweet right here. Apple stock has also started to record a bit of a high. So a little bit of move on Apple. You have to consider the S&P 500 as a whole is really just in a good position. All right, last up here is the Financial Services Committee hearing. This is a hearing entitled the Federal Reserve Semi-Annual Monetary Policy Report. This is where Powell is going to be speaking. It'll be interesting to see the outcome of this, how it affects monetary policy in general, because we haven't talked about interest rates in general. I think we're still months out before we do see a cut. A couple of points I want to hit on. Of course, Bitcoin right here as it starts to bottom out, even though that is right there was the 53.6. One thing you guys will notice about this chart is this has a new indicator in it. This is our live MSI now, which is our market sentiment index, is now layered in on all charts. I'll be doing a lot more of these kinds of analysis. We'll break down these, get a little more in the trenches with these in the future. So if you're not in on the Diamond Circle, that's places where you're going to get those kind of videos, additional content. And of course, it's also where you can now be part of our community, which is a brand new shiny community program that is within the Diamond Circle. So make sure and join. Just click the link down below. If you guys are not following me on X, make sure and do that. It's just at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.